Good afternoon, welcome back to my channel. I'm traveling for work again. You might recognize this picture from a previous video. Today I wanted to grab another one of these mood boards, review boards, what do you call them? Kind of brain triggering idea sheets, whatever you want to call it. Because a while ago now, I read these three A.E. Van Vogt books in a row. So basically I read this one first, The Undercover Aliens, Panther. I then read this small, The Changeling. Not sure who the Manor books. And I also read Panther, Mind Cage. Now I've got multiple copies of these, but these are the ones that kind of I chose from my shelf. Now, I have to say before I start that A. Van Vogt has got a bit of a soft spot in my heart already. I just like what he's trying to achieve. And remember, this is a long time ago. So the first one, Undercover Aliens, was from 1950, original publishing. The Changeling, which I think is a fix-up novel from other short stories, was 1942, and The Mind Cage, so the latest one, is 1957. So everything I talk about is in context of that time. So thinking of the ideas that he comes up with, they're very new and interesting at the time. And I'll go into a few of those themes that I was sort of surprised to see, pushed or mentioned. But in essence, three very similar books, in my opinion, with overlying themes that those of you that might know A.E. Van Vogt really well, maybe these go through all of his books, but this is my first three books of A.E. Van Vogt. So that's why I wanted to do this triple whammy review. So without further ado, let's have a look at the sheet to help me remember what actually happened back in the day. And back in the day is, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I can't remember. So let's go in not chronological order, but chronological order of when I read them, not when it was published. So the first one was Undercover Aliens. So I think I mentioned that great cover, Peter Jones cover, but nothing to do with the book, the story. And when I look even more closely, nothing really to do with the story. You look at it and go, okay, it's sci-fi and it's to do with aliens. Well, there are aliens, right? Just before I start, I'm going to try and do this as kind of spoiler-free. It will be a more generic review than the ones I did before, which did include spoilers. So if you want to read these, obviously. But in essence, this book is about a young lawyer who's called Alison, I think, Alison Stevens, which I think was a quite popular name in the 40s and 50s in the US. And he's been tasked to investigate basically a mansion on the hill with strange goings on. And there's a kind of a murder. Someone dies. Now, the interesting thing here is when he delves more deeply, he discovers what you'd call kind of an exclusive club of people and strange goings on, let's say. So there's a lady who's telepathic, and there's a lot of hinting at attempts for immortality, etc., those kind of things. And that's one of the themes, actually two of the themes that you see, or I've seen through the books, is kind of psychological powers or telepathy, plus immortality being this goal or this dream. So basically, so someone dies, and this young lawyer, Mr. Stevens, is challenged to look into it by someone else. And then other deaths happen. A caretaker, and there's an elevator guy that's killed. And basically, what you find out is you follow Alison Stevens as he goes through the investigation. The house on the hill, which actually is the house that stood still is the other name for this novel. So the house is a big character in this. And I'd probably say it kind of makes more sense than this title, because the house, as I say, plays a big role, but also it's ancient. There's a lot of description about it's always been there, you know, before us, whoever's talking about it, or before man, or before the community around it. So the house is very important. Without giving too much away, there's doors that are found and subterranean places that are investigated. And there is implication that maybe the people who inhabit this house, who frequent this house, are not from this world. That's pretty implied pretty early on, so it's not spoilers. So yeah, it's just an interesting kind of romp. There's not a lot of, obviously it's sci-fi, there's implications, but it's not kind of up in space. It's not, you know, spaceship driven. It's not aliens at the forefront of things for being alien. It is definitely more like a whodunit, a psychological investigation, and kind of really like it could be seen as like a small town American mystery. And that's why I quite liked it. And there's links obviously to kind of ancient civilizations. So, you know, think Mayans, Aztecs, those kind of historical, interesting civilizations. More South and Central American. But yeah, it flowed pretty well. It was soft in places but easy to read. So I don't like things like, you know, like I used to read a lot of Will Self, where sometimes deliberately verbose language gets in the way of storytelling. This is definitely not that. It's the other way. Yeah, really nice, really easy to read. The atmosphere that is created, giving you small pieces of information over time, you know, like a traditional kind of crime novel, is definitely apparent. But yeah, mind reading, immortality. There's also a love story in here, actually. He falls for one of the exclusive club members, which obviously has some kind of impact. In terms of my first A. Van Vogt, I was pleasantly surprised. It was an easy read. It wasn't anything like I've read before, to be honest. It's kind of standalone. I don't read these kind of ancient civilization hinting ideas. So I'd kind of recommend it as a first way into A. Van Vogt. It was small, it was easy to read, but there was enough there that made me think I'd like to move on. There's a bit of kind of corruption, there's a bit of like family feud and drama, and there's like, it's just all shrouded in this mystery about the house itself, the people inside the house, and what the whole point of the whole place is. So yeah, I'm not going to give any star rating or anything like that, but I really enjoyed that. And as my first A. Van Vogt, I'm very happy, and I've got a huge amount of A. Van Vogt from some of my book hauls, and I'm happy about that, because I'd like to have an extended collection and eventually read all of them, because this is kind of the foundation to a lot of what we read now, is my opinion. So yeah, really good. So the second one is The Changeling, and this is like a novelette really, and I think it was a fix-up. I think I read somewhere it's a fix-up. And I've also seen a couple of reviews where people just think this is, and he is like, you know, it's unreadable because of, let's say, some of the views of the time. This one, especially in terms of misogyny or equality of genders, etc. And I can obviously see it. You read this and it's obvious. But if it's written in 1942, rightly or wrongly, I kind of try to read it in the time and the place it was written. Yes, it's trying to be, it's trying to be future driven. So I obviously like those people who can bypass those things within their writing, but I'm not gonna, not read someone because there's a slight old and, you know, out of date and problematic views on certain political ideas. But anyway, so The Changeling is about a guy who kind of wakes up in... You first see this guy in a company called the Nesbitt Company. And again, it's that strange feeling which I had from the first book. The strange feeling in the first book was the house itself and the mystery surrounding the house. And you with the legal rep trying to find out what was going on. This one's more, you're with the guy. His name's Leslie Craig, so L-E-S-L-I-E, and he's in his office and he's feeling quite good, but he's also feeling a little bit out of sorts. And the feeling out of sorts is because he doesn't have a memory of his childhood, his growing up, his previous, career. And you start to find out why, but basically it's a little bit like, was it Paycheck, Philip K. Dick, where he wakes up, he doesn't know who he is, and he's just got an envelope of things, and he has to kind of put his life back together and his memory back together. So again, like the first one, which was psychological mind reading, etc., this is about memory and perception and the mind, which the Mind Cage, the third one, is as well. And what actually happens is he actually challenges himself to try to get some of the records of his life to see if he's going mad. So he gets his war record of the time and his birth certificate, and he gets them and he thinks, oh, everything's great. Now, everything's not great. And again, I don't want to do any spoilers, but he finds out things eventually from his past which can't be true of him now, right? So like something happened to him when he was younger, apparently, which wouldn't make sense for him how he is now. So something medical, something physical. And that's quite a nice little play. I quite like that bit. But the bit that kind of shocked me a little bit is I read this whole book, this whole novelette, and I got it. I feel I got it. But then a bit that I didn't get is I read the blurb on the back. I didn't do that at the beginning, and it kind of makes more sense. So it basically says the world was coming to an end. I didn't really get that feeling through this novelette. And it says, but only the totipotents knew it. So totipotency, which is literally on the blurb, so it's not a spoiler, is something, if you look it up online, is a specific thing, which is kind of what you call like cell regeneration, which also includes memory. And the bit that I didn't realize is, but only the totipotents knew it. They were the instruments of the alien invaders. So before I should have read that first, because then when we're with Leslie, when he kind of awakens or whatever in the office, we kind of know already that he's totipotent, and therefore we know already he's a tool of these aliens, and therefore it kind of makes sense. So I didn't read the back, and I didn't have the context, and I have to say maybe why this one is slightly problematic or people don't review it that highly is it wasn't that obvious as I went along, and when I read the end I went, oh, okay. So that's just something to say. The thing I've written down here in brown, you might not see it in the middle, is sense of foreboding, which I think is like a Vogtian thing. He's very good at the sense of foreboding in the house, in the subterranean parts of the house. Also in this, there's a sense, and it's a big storytelling trope now, right? You think of a lot of classic stories. You've got 3 or 4 kind of connected narratives, but then there's something in the middle or underlying it all that you get hints at. So Hyperion, I always think about with the Shrike. You can think about, obviously, Book of the New Sun, Shadow of the Torturer, things like that, Gene Wolfe, where there's a sense of foreboding, there's something you don't understand. There's a story going on, but there's something underneath. Now, I think Van Vogt does that pretty well. It's not as layered as something like Gene Wolfe, but it's there, and I think that really adds to this. Once they had been ordinary men, but when the invaders from space took possession of their bodies, they became immortal and perpetually young, able to read minds and predict and change the future. So that's the bit I didn't get. So yes, again, mind reading. So the totipotency and the alien amendment to these men has obviously made them valuable to governments, probably as weapons. So yeah, I won't say, again, too much more about this one. I did enjoy it. It was a very quick read, very similar writing style. It is earlier than the one before. I'd say I liked it. I definitely liked the opening and trying to find out about what this guy was thinking within this kind of happenstance that he was thrown into. But I'd probably say that Undercover Aliens was more enjoyable overall. But that's number 2, The Changeling. I think that's got a different name as well. And then number 3 was probably my favourite. And it's also kind of the clearest in my mind, which might be recency, but it also might be because I enjoyed it more. And I've got a few copies of this. If you've seen my recent haul, I've got like, I think 4 or 5 different copies now. I think from the 50s and onwards. So this was originally in 1957. Now, we said about the sense of foreboding, this really has it as well. Now, the difference here is it has an awareness of, or the hinting towards AI. So this is 1957. So there's a thing that runs through this called the brain, which is basically a computer intelligence. And the way A. Van Vogt kind of writes about it is quite, not modern, but it's telling in the fact that he kind of understands. So this is more a dystopian type authoritarian society, and the main guy in it, let me get his name, if I remember his name, is Marin. So Marin is a guy who's got a friend called Trask, and Trask kind of gets, he's going to get arrested for sedition. Basically, he disagrees with the powers that be on something. And Marin defends Trask, basically saying that Trask is a brilliant scientist, which he is. And he's saying like one thing should not destroy a man. And basically the dystopian society is run by what they call the Great Judge. So it's like a communist authority. And again, there's twists and turns and spoilers that I won't spoil, but the Great Judge is kind of putting this guy, Trask, up to on trial for sedition. Now, what happens, and the reason it's called the Mind Cage is, and this isn't a spoiler again, is that Trask has invented something which can swap a brain between 2 bodies. And he does it with Marin. So what through the book, very early in the book, is Marin is in Trask's body. Therefore, what would happen is that Marin would go to trial for Trask's sedition. And again, it's just quite a nicely well-told, well-rounded story about that kind of, it's done a lot now, the kind of the body-mind swap. But there are some other tricks that Van Vogt uses, and he uses them in the other books as well, like masking. So not only is Marin in Trask's body, he's got the ability to also alter his face. So in this dystopian world, look, it's not like plastic surgery, but you can actually change your face to look like someone else. So you've got like a triple layer now. You've got Marin in Trask's body, but Trask's body being made to look like Marin. So you can imagine what you can do. It's again Philip K. Dickian layers of psychological and perceptional, I don't know, that's not a word, but perception intrigue. So, and then through all of that, through all the normal narrative, you've got this strange place. There's a place called Prip City where there's hybrids. So, yep, Van Vogt likes hybrids as well, so kind of fish people, and what else have they got there? Tigers, part tigers. And these people have genetic memory, so they have memory from evolutionary history, which is another thread that's like, what? And there's a place called the Shelters, where it's kind of, in any of these authoritative environments, there's always an outlier section. You know, for example, I've spent some time in Brunei, for example, which is quite a strict regime, let's say. But you go to the river, and there's people who are living on kind of these wooden stilted houses, and it was like, who are these guys? You know, it's, oh, well, they're slightly outside the regime. This was the Shelters. So you've got the Shelters, you've got the brain, which is this, it was there before and it's disappeared. So this computer brain used to play a role in society and no longer plays a role in society because the great judge is running it. So again, I won't go into too much, but there's masks, there's mutants, or mind powers, let's say. The mind powers here are kind of linked to a piece of equipment that Trask has invented, but it's still the same thing. It's like in Undercover Aliens and in the Changeling with mind reading. This is kind of mind swapping. And the interesting thing that A. Van Vogt does is, if a mind swap from body A to body B, and let's say body A had really good eyes and body B had really bad eyes, what would actually happen? Is the mind that powerful within a physical brain to alter some of those physical attributes of that human? I found that bit quite interesting. That's one thing that I remember for sure. In terms of world building, I think this was, although I do like the Undercover Aliens in terms of the atmosphere of the world, this is kind of more world building for a new dystopia. It reminded me a bit of maybe something like The Fifth Element, where they have things like hop jets. And I, in my mind, rightly or wrongly, was tall buildings with, air cars and stuff like that, which is where my mind often goes. So the great judge, right at the beginning, you hear about mating games, and you're like, what? Mating games? And it's basically, I don't know, eugenics or whatever, but it's, you win games to be able to sow your seed. So you can understand the lengths of control within this society. And you can also see why someone like Trask would be against some of the process or the decision making. So it becomes a rebellion story, really, and then kind of a fight for freedom, let's say. I enjoyed it the most. The story itself was the most compelling. I think with the brain, it added a dimension that the other two books didn't have. And what I found quite interesting is the anti-human element as well. Like, there is often mention of humans are full of hate. And there's the question of technology versus human decision-making, right? Those kind of ideas are really intriguing to me. 10,000 decisions. How many even does an honourable or objectively empathetic human make to 10,000 decisions? And how much would like an AI make? I honestly think I'm in technology, I don't know a lot about AI, but I'm aware of its current impact. It's a really interesting area to look into, ethics and AI and the decision-making for humanity moving away from humanity's control. Like, what does that mean? Anyway, so that's the Mind Cave. Really, really good. It had a little bit of like Total Recall as well, I think. Like the man escaping from something, and also it had the mind impact. So yeah, really enjoyed that. So of the three, well, overall, A. Van Vogt is definitely on my radar. I've got a lot of other books. I think Slan is one that I'm aware of. And I've been speaking to a guy on YouTube who's a proper expert of A. Van Vogt. I hope he watches this. And he puts on all my mistakes to bed. and kind of lets me know what he thinks. But really happy that I finally read A. van Vogt. My collection is growing and I will read more. But in order, I think it has to go, this top, this second, this third. But there is overlying themes that I expect to see in other A. van Vogt. So masks, immortality, mind reading, AI versus human mind, identity, which is obviously the masks and the face changing. And yeah, I just want to say, I recommend, if you're a sci-fi fan and you haven't read A. van Vogt, please check him out, because I think he's got a lot to say, especially for the time. So, yes. So thank you again, as always, for listening to me prattle on. This is my second proper book review. I do plan to do more, and I plan to do it with more structure, I think, because the older I get, my brain is getting softer, let's say. And I did just read an incredible book. I finished it here, which is one of my favorites. And I might just go straight into doing a review of that, because it's in my heart at the moment. I can feel it, and I don't want that feeling to ebb before I do my review. And that book, by the way, is Sirius by Olaf Stapledon. So yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you again very soon, and I'll be home very soon. Cheers.